A year and a half before Colorado elects a new governor, the race is already starting to take shape. Republican George Brauchler, the district attorney for the 18th Judicial District, using this ad to throw in his hat into the ring to replace Democrat John Hickenlooper. Tony Kovaleski was the first to sit down for an extended interview with the new candidate.
Why are you running for governor?
One, this is the only home I've ever known. I mean, everything that's important to me is here in this state. My kids, my wife, I mean, every part of my life has occurred here. Whether it's going to public school here, getting my commission here, getting married here, burying my mom here, having my kids here, my district attorney job is here. I don't want to be anyplace else. And at the same time, I recognize that every single important issue that you guys report upon, that gets talked about in the papers and the water coolers, those are things that take place under my roof every single day. This state means something to me, and not just for now, but for the future, because I want my kids to inherit the kind of Colorado that I did, and I want them to be able to afford to stay here and want to stay here. And I think I can bring the kind of leadership to this office that it has been missing for some time now.
What's the one quality that you bring that you believe makes you most qualified to be governor of this great state?
Leadership. Listen, I think what we've seen over the last 6 years is affability in management. And affability is not a substitute for leadership. I think I have proven from my time in office that I will stand up for the things that I believe in, for the things that I think are right, even in the face of opposition, whether it's opposition from my own party or from other powers that be. And I will spend political capital to do what I think is right. So that kind of commitment to doing the right thing and the leadership that it takes to do that, to make a difference, I think that's what I bring to the table. And it's not just as DA. I mean, look, I'm a colonel in the Army National Guard. I've spent decades in uniform serving my country and now serving my state here, across the country, in Iraq. I think when you spend a lifetime committing yourself to something bigger than yourself, I don't know what the word is to describe that other than service to others and sacrifice, but that's what I bring to the table.
What do you believe Colorado voters want in their next governor?
I think they want leadership. I think they want commitment to Colorado's specific brand of values, and I think that's different. I mean, we're a different people, right? We're a state that is committed to liberty to the exclusion of ideology, and that's how you get a state that is so invested in the Second Amendment and the ability to own and possess firearms, concealed and otherwise, and yet a state that also says we believe in legalized recreational marijuana by a significant margin. This is a state that wants to be left alone by and large. This is a state that believes in neighbors and community and not what can government do for me. This is a state that believes in self-determination. Those are all things that I subscribe to. This is the area that I grew up in. This is the state that taught me what it means to be a citizen. And I bring that to the table.
Let's talk about history. Colorado has gone blue in the last 3 presidential elections. Colorado has not elected a Republican governor since Bill Owens in 1998. How do you, a Republican candidate, win in a state that's been consistently blue for a while?
In terms of a truly open seat, we've just had Governor Owens in the past century. That means something. That's a big deal. I'm not sure that's a reflection of Colorado's commitment to one party over the other or it being blue versus red. I think the dynamics of this state are ever-changing. I think the dynamics of politics are ever-changing. Some of it's a product of our campaign finance. Some of it's a product of professional politicians. Some of it's a product of social media and how the news has changed. Look, I think what I bring to the table is I'm a Republican and I am the conservative in this race. That is true. But those labels don't define me. I define me. I'm a George Brauchler, Colorado Republican, and that's someone that subscribes to the values of this state, not to some national Republican Party. We're different.
One thing you hear often during elections is independents decide Colorado. How do you get the independent vote in this state?
Look, I think what independents want is what you and I want, and that is someone with the guts to stand up for what's right and for someone to stand up for something that they believe in. I think we've had enough of affability, wishy-washiness, just trying to remain popular at all costs. I think we've seen leadership from behind. I think we've seen a leadership model where as long as you're in the room when other people make the hard decisions, you get credit for it. I think all of Colorado, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, I think they're all craving someone to stand up and say, let's move forward together and not just let the winds of change blow us around.
In our last election, Mike Coffman, a Republican, distanced himself from Donald Trump, the candidate. Now you're running with President Trump. Have you considered creating distance there? Do you need to do that in order to win this state?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, as the federal government continues to play a larger role in the day-to-day lives of Coloradans, then all of a sudden we have to be more concerned about who we put in the Oval Office than we probably should be. You know our budget. A significant portion of that comes from the federal government. That means that they dictate how we spend money to better ourselves. That's a mistake. I think we need someone to stand up and say, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, whether it's Trump or anybody else, listen, there's a role for the federal government to play, and it is not in the day-to-day lives of Coloradans. Now, having said that, he is our commander-in-chief. He's due the same respect that we owe to anybody that fills that position.
Looking back on the Aurora Theater case, you got a guilty verdict, but not a death sentence.
Right.
A victory. How do you look back on what you did in that case?
Look, I am a firm believer that our system generates justice because the system is just. Process matters. We're not Machiavellian. It's not the ends justify the means. That's some other country. That's not ours. I am invested in this system, and had that juror that sort of derailed the rest of deliberations for sincerely held beliefs, I don't hold that against them. Had they moved forward and they had voted to impose death, the sentence that I thought was justice, I would expect the community to embrace that sentence as a just outcome. Well, they didn't. And I'm not going to give scandal to the system by saying something other. I think that was justice because it went through our system. Now, if you ask me personally, do I think that guy deserves to die for what he did? I absolutely believe that to this day. But that outcome, that was justice.
Marijuana, an important issue for many voters in Colorado. Where do you stand, and will you defend the decision of Colorado voters if the federal government comes knocking?
Yeah, I'm going to defend the laws that are on our books and in the Constitution, especially the ones that are voted on directly by voters, just like this one was. Now, if you'd asked me back at the time it was on the ballot, do you support amending our state constitution to make marijuana part of it? I'd have said, no, let's not do that. Frankly, if we were going to legalize recreational marijuana, we should have done it statutorily to make it easier to try to figure out how to address some of the issues we've seen. But having said that, 55% of those who voted on that issue said they want it to be legal. Well, I embrace the rule of law, and I embrace the will of the voters in that, and I would stand up to a federal government that tried to visit its will on top of ours. But we're going to make this law work. Now, it doesn't right now, and anybody that tells you that this thing is working well and it's being well regulated and the tax money is the only thing to focus on, that is foolish. I'm going to protect families out there, including my own, from, I think, what are the dangers of this Wild West-like approach to marijuana regulation. We're going to fix this thing, but it's not going to be tomorrow.
Will money decide this race, and can you win a money race with other announced candidates?
I don't think money is the difference maker here. I don't take it for granted. I think it's important to get your message out. But my route to success isn't to be the richest candidate in this race. It's to be the grassroots candidate that goes out and wins voters just like this, face to face. Them measuring me up, me understanding the issues that are important to them.
To the death penalty. A lot of controversy during the last governor's election between you and Governor Hickenlooper over the death penalty. Nathan Dunlap, the Chuck E. Cheese murderer. If you're elected, will you send Dunlap to death row?
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna breathe life back into that jury's verdict. And that's not because I say death is appropriate. That's because 12 people that his attorneys helped pick back in 1996 voted unanimously to sentence him to death. The guy had 17 years of post-conviction appellate review. The Supreme Court finally came back and said, there's nothing left for us here, go impose this sentence. And it was only because our governor took an affirmative stance to stand up and shrug that didn't happen. So yes, I am going to put the force of law behind that verdict that mass murderer earned 20 years ago.
There you heard from George Brauchler. Right now, the only other Republican in the race is former state lawmaker Victor Mitchell. Now, on the Democratic side, Congressman Ed Perlmutter is announcing his intentions this weekend, joining former lawmaker Mike Johnston and businessman Noel Ginsburg.